Hello everyone, my name is Roya, and today I'm coming to you with the books that I read in the latter half of April. I have 9 books here to talk about, so I'm going to just get into it and talk about them as quickly as possible to keep this video from getting too long. So, Daisy Jones and the Six, I really was not a fan. It was okay, but honestly, Daisy was a manic pixie dream girl, and I'm always very critical of books that are about a band and all of that anyway, because I'm a musician, and also, the bass player barely shows up in this, like ever, and as a bass player, I just take that shit personally. I'm sorry, it just happens all the time, and it's like, really, man? I don't know. So overall, I don't feel like this book did anything, and it was like trying to make a point of some kind, but it just didn't at all. There was no reason for us to be following any of this, and I was just kind of bored. The last verse, this is about a young girl, like 19 years old, who goes to Nashville to try to make it in music in some way. And basically what happens is she starts dating a guy, and then she finds out that he is engaged to somebody else, and then she kind of realizes that she was played and all of that, and then when he finds out that she knows, he tries to kill her, and so in self-defense, she kills him. She writes a song about it, plays it at one, like, open mic or something to one audience, and then a couple weeks later, someone else is on the radio singing it. So she has to kind of decide, like, do I come forward and say that that was my song that everyone's talking about, or do I just shut up and not say anything to not implicate myself, basically? So that is a very interesting concept, but overall I felt like the execution of this book was pretty flat. For one thing, we don't have any urgency. The main character has nothing going for her. She left home. She owns nothing but a guitar. She has no job. She has no home, nothing. So there's no reason for her to try to avoid getting caught. Like, there's not really any urgency there. And then our other point of view of this book is the detective trying to find out what happened, and all of her parts felt really pointless because we already know what happened. We were there, we saw it in the book as it happened, so there was no reason to be following the investigation that was just going through how they found out it was her, basically. And then also the detective is so focused on just putting the criminal away and holding her and all of that, and in order to, like, get her old job back with the PD and all of that, that there's no, like, she just came across as very one-track minded, and really so did everybody in this book. And then also the only other thing that we know about the detective, basically, other than, like, we never find out why she was let go from the PD, which is kind of weird, but also the only other thing we really know about her is that she has an estranged son who kind of, like, went no contact and moved out as soon as he was 18, and he even shows up and tries to explain to her exactly what she did wrong, and she still never gets it. So it's like nothing was learned from this book. Nothing was ever, and then I also kind of expected the detective to kind of, like, let the main character go once she finds out that she did it, because, once upon finding out that it was, like, self-defense, like, I thought maybe she was gonna find out it was self-defense and, like, let her go or something. But that does not happen. She does not care about anything aside from incriminating the main character. So the whole thing just felt really flat. So overall, great idea, but just the execution was not there. First King of Shannara by Terry Brooks. This was really entertaining, but I think mostly it's because it was almost the only fantasy book that ended up being on that I've read in the last 2 weeks that's in this wrap-up. Normally I read, like, all fantasy practically. This is such an assorted list of books in this wrap-up that, like, this is the only fantasy book. So mostly it felt like a nice breath of fresh air to get back to, like, a fantasy book after all these books that are not fantasy. But overall, I don't feel like it did anything different, and I was a little bored. I was kind of like, all right, sure, like, kind of, but overall, it wasn't bad. To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. This is basically your typical, like, people in outer space stumble upon another planet, blah, 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 and do they really want to interrupt what's going on there? All of that. So overall, like, this is really short, and it was kind of, like, it was good, but it was pretty boring compared to her other books. I've read one other book of hers that really was different and unique, and so by comparison this one felt really boring. A Man Called Uwe, this is about a guy who is like this really disgruntled old man who's kind of just this like, you kids get off my lawn kind of guy. Like he's just super snippety about everything. And then this family moves in who kind of makes him have to get out of that and be friendlier and be nicer to people, and kind of gives him a reason to care about things other than himself. So overall, I liked this book. I think it kind of had a good message, but I don't think it got in depth enough with it, and it ultimately was a little bit boring. But I really liked that one of the main characters is Iranian, so that was really awesome. I'm Iranian, in case you don't know this. So whenever I see an Iranian main character in something, I'm like, yes. But anyway, so overall, and there's a cat in this. The guy has to get and ends up adopting a cat, and it's really cute. So anyway, good story. I just don't think it was quite for me. Some Girls Do. This is about two girls who fall in love. One of them is basically like a pageant girl, and while she doesn't hate being in a pageant, like she doesn't dislike being a pageant girl, it's not really her thing. It's her mom's thing that she forced on her, basically. And then the other girl is a competing runner, and she is suing her old Catholic school for basically not letting her run anymore after she came out as lesbian. So this was a pretty good book. It had some good messages in there, especially when it comes to one character not being able to be out for safety reasons, and the other one having to realize that the other girl not being willing to be out is more important than her wanting to be out. It is a safety concern. You can't just make your girlfriend be out just because you don't want to go back in the closet, kind of thing. So she kind of has to realize that, there are factors there that are worth considering. So that was a really good message and all of that. But overall, I felt like this book was a little bit of a letdown. I think that back like 10 years ago, back when I was actively looking for books like this, I think that I would have loved it, but I feel like overall, as a story in and of itself, this book was a little bit boring. The main character, like none of the characters have any personalities. The two main characters are defined entirely by their interests rather than any personalities. So we do get dual perspectives for both of them, and I definitely felt like there were times when I could not tell which person's point of view it was, because they were so similar, because personality was not a thing in this book, basically. So overall, worth a read, but I didn't love it. Evil Eye, this is about a Palestinian woman who is stuck in a marriage with a guy she doesn't really love. She has two daughters, and basically she has been brought up as someone who has had to even though she lived in the US her whole life and everything, her parents very much said you have to get married, blah blah blah. So even though she went to college, she has a teaching job, all of that, marriage, and all that stuff, being a mom and a wife, and all of that was just kind of the default as that she was raised with. She was not presented with the option of just not doing that. So when she starts thinking about I'm not happy, she really has to get to a point where she's okay with leaving a marriage and all of that. And it's definitely really frustrating to read at times, because every time her husband says no, you're being selfish, and totally dismissing her concerns about stuff, just because she wants to go on vacation, and he keeps saying that no, it's not the right time, blah blah blah. And so this was a really good, really unputdownable book, and I really liked it. We Are Satellites by Sarah Pinsker. This is about basically a family of two moms and two kids who are living in a society where everyone is getting these brain implants that help you multitask and help you focus on different things at once and all of that. And it's becoming kind of the standard that as more and more people are getting them, the more it's kind of assumed, the world is catered towards people who have them. So people who can't get them or opt not to are kind of falling behind and all of that. So in this family, one mom and one kid get the brain implants, and then because like the son starts needing it for school, and then one of the moms thinks like this would really help me for work and stuff, like it like really appeals to her, she really wants to get one. And then the daughter can't get one because she has a seizure problem and has had brain surgery and stuff. And then the other mom just opts not to get one because she's just really against that. So then we have this family that basically gets divided by people who are getting ahead in society and doing things, and people who are kind of falling behind in this society where people are really divided by whether they have one of these brain implants or not. And this was a really fascinating story. It was really fun to read. And finally, The Sin Eater. This was the last book that I read in the month of April. This is about a girl who lives in kind of a Tudor era-esque world. It's a fantasy book, but it is so heavily based on the Tudor era. And she becomes a sin eater out of no fault of her own. But basically, a sin eater is someone who has to eat a meal at the time of someone's death, where every item in it is a sin that like represents a sin that the deceased person committed, so then they're being absolved of their sins basically. So she did really, it's not her fault that she had to become a sin eater, but as soon as she does, she's like ignored, kicked out by her family, just kind of no one speaks to her, people throw rocks at her and all of that. So it was a pretty good concept, but I felt like overall the whole world building just did not, it was just not for me. The fact that there is a disclaimer at the beginning of this book saying that people in this book are meant to resemble people from history, but they are not, they're not meant to be those people. It is not meant to be historical, but the people referenced and the people in it were so similar to those people, i.e. Queen Elizabeth, Queen Mary, etc., etc. I kept forgetting that this was not a Tudor era setting, and that was very annoying. And then also the plot itself really wasn't as good. It was not that interesting. Like it didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Like what's trying to be solved here is like not anything that important. And then also, you know how sometimes when you have a main character and they don't necessarily know someone's name yet, so they give him a nickname, like, oh, Black Hair said that blah, 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 or like Scarface said that blah, 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 or whatever, until you find out what their name actually is, because if the main character doesn't know their name. So this happens in this book, but the main character never starts referring to people by name. She's constantly just nicknaming them the entire time. So, and that didn't really sit right with me, because one lady who she nicknames initially is the Painted Pig, which basically just means she's a fat lady with entirely too much makeup on. And so even if she like learns her name, she never refers to her as anything other than the Painted Pig. Even when she's on her deathbed, she's just the Painted Pig to the main character, and that felt really insensitive to me. I was like, really? Are you serious right now? And that just happened the entire, throughout the entire book, because this was a fairly significant character, and I'm like, really, man? And then also, I did dock this book points for animal cruelty. There is a scene involving a dog that was really, really terrible. There is a really nice scene involving a cat at the very end of the book, which is great, but like, I still don't like, that doesn't make up for like there being animal cruelty in the book. That's just a personal trigger of mine. I don't want to read books that have animal cruelty in it. So if I already know that an animal, that like an animal is treated cruelly or killed or something in a book, I will not read it. But if I don't know this about a book, I get really upset when I read it. So I was really upset by having that in this book. But so basically this was a really good book. I kind of enjoyed reading it, but I think it could have been so much better. There was so much that it could have been improved upon. So anyway, those are the books that I read in the month of April, or the second half of the month of April. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!